Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less Show. Today is April 28th, 2022. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the show, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. This is our 99th episode, and it comes just 3 days before May 1st, May Day, a day of celebration and struggle of the oppressed around the world. This is a day that we, the RevComs, go out far and wide among all sections of the people, and especially those who are most pushed down by this system. And we raise the banner of May 1st as a Revolutionary Internationalist Day, a day to declare and to advance our struggle and organization for revolution, real revolution here and around the world, to overthrow the yoke of the capitalist imperialist system we live under that downpresses, oppresses, and exploits people all over the world. This is a dog-eat-dog global system that does not meet the needs of humanity. This is a system that is driving humanity and the world possibly towards extinction through environmental devastation, as well as alarmingly so now with the growing possibility of the unthinkable, a nuclear war. May 1st is a Revolutionary Internationalist Day of celebration and struggle, because this revolution, the revolution we need here in the world's largest and most dangerous empire, and the revolution that is needed in every country on the planet, must be guided by and aiming for the goal of the emancipation of all humanity. Bob Avakian, the revolutionary leader whose work and leadership we follow here on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, has developed a new synthesis of communism, a major qualitative breakthrough in putting the method and approach, as well as the strategy and the goal of communism, on a consistently and thoroughly scientific foundation. And a core breakthrough of this understanding is encapsulated in the slogan, Internationalism. The whole world comes first. This understanding is what needs to ground the joy and the struggle in celebrating the momentous fight for a whole new world, for the emancipation of all humanity, not just my people, my nation, myself, but people all over the world. And this has special importance this year with the war in Ukraine, where the U.S. and its NATO bloc are squaring off in a proxy war against Russia, which has already invaded Ukraine. This is why we raise these slogans on May 1st, Internationalist May Day. No U.S.-NATO war with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution. There is not yet a direct war between Russia and the U.S.-NATO bloc, but there is the growing, dangerous threat of a shooting war between these two gangster superpowers. They both threaten a nuclear holocaust of the whole planet if they feel their standing in the world seriously threatened. With such stakes, the people must not be spectators. The people must act. This is why you need to be there on May 1st to sound the alarm and say no U.S.-NATO war with Russia, no World War III. This danger, along with the intensifying destruction of the environment, threatens the very existence of humanity, as I said. And yet, this is not the only reason for you to join us and represent on May 1st. Police murders and repression continue. The U.S. Supreme Court moves to end the right to abortion. There are continuing and new horrors facing immigrants, and a fascist threat gathers and aims to seize the main machinery of repression in the state. In the face of all of this, the people must act on May Day and be a part of what will be one of the first public stands against the very present danger of World War III. March with us on May 1st as we point to the cause and to the solution and say, it's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. Bob Avakian, BA, has recently said that, quote, humanity cannot afford any longer to allow these imperialists on any side to continue to rule the world and battle over who will dominate in this situation, with the very real and dire threat this poses to the future and, again, to the very existence of humanity. In his major work, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, Profound Crisis, Deepening Divisions, and the Looming Possibility of Civil War, and the Revolution That Is Urgently Needed, a necessary foundation and basic roadmap for this revolution, Bob Avakian writes that while we face the real prospect of something really terrible in the situation today, quote, it is also possible that we could wrench something really positive out of it to put an end to this system and bring something much better into being, end quote. Today, as all this looms, we dare to say we don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution. That is what this show is about. It is what it is for. And we're going to begin today's program on the danger of the war in Ukraine and what we need to do and what's in the interests of humanity. Then we will be speaking about the importance of this, the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, in the process of impacting this country and the world with the real revolution aimed at the emancipation of humanity as we approach our 100th episode. Following that, we are going to have an update on the critical fight for the right of women to be full human beings, the struggle that must be waged now to stop the Supreme Court of the United States from taking away the right to abortion from women. And finally, in today's program, we're going to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the largest rebellion in U.S. history, the Los Angeles Rebellion that began on April 29th, 1992, and this will be a very rich report.
I saw World War I, where lots of trouble begun. I saw World War II, when the pirates came right through. Looking for World War III, but you got to set me free. Free from the chains and this here misery. 'Cause I say that we don't want no nuclear war. With nuclear war, we won't get far. I say that we don't want no nuclear war. With nuclear war, we won't get far. No, just another Holocaust. Oh, another Holocaust. Can you take another Holocaust? Then we can't take no more. We can't take no more. We can't take it no more.
That was the late, great reggae musician Peter Tosh in his song, We Don't Want No Nuclear War. He sang, looking for World War III, you gotta set me free, free from the chains and this here misery. With nuclear war, we won't get far. We don't want no nuclear war. So with that as an introduction, we want to get into the first of the May 1st slogans, No U.S. NATO War with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. And to dig into why people should come out on May 1st and show their unity with that slogan, I'm going to be speaking with Raymond Lotta, my comrade and colleague in Revolution and at Revolution Books in New York City, where Raymond is tonight. Welcome, Raymond Lotta.
Well, thanks, Andy. It's always great to be with you.
All right, good. So, likewise, we're going to draw from and speak to a very important article from Bob Avakian on our website, revcom.us, titled Ukraine. World War III is the real danger, not a repeat of World War II, as well as a companion piece titled World War III and Dangerous Idiocy. Speaking to what needs to be done and the interests of humanity, Bob Avakian says in the last section of World War III is the real danger, quote, it would be, of course, be in the interests of the masses of people everywhere for the actions of the imperialists on both sides of this war to be halted right away. But the reality is that we, the masses of people in the countries involved and in the world as a whole, do not and cannot determine in direct and immediate terms what the different governments will do, end quote. He goes on to say that would require a revolution to overthrow the system. Then he goes on to say, quote, what we can do and need to do now while these imperialists are still in power is speak, and act in opposition to their military aggression on all sides, with the aim of contributing in that way to a situation where they feel compelled to pull back from such aggression, end quote. He goes on to point out that this is what happened with the Vietnam War, where the anti-war movement was a significant factor leading to U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam. So with that as background, Raymond, as a starting point in this piece, Bob Avakian speaks to how the first casualty of war is truth, and he slams into the role of the U.S. as holding the record for invasions, coups, and other violent interference in other countries. And we've exposed a lot of that here on the RNL Show and on revcom.us. But I just want to interject that the former governor of California, Jerry Brown, has an article this week in the New York Review of Books that begins with this startling statistic. In the 20 years of U.S.-led war on terror since September 11th, 2001, U.S. attacks and these wars have killed more than 900,000 people and displaced at least 38 million. So who are they to talk about war crimes? Bob Avakian goes on to speak to the viewpoints trumpeted by the media and taken up by all too many people, including people who should know better, that the Russian ruler Putin is like Hitler. And, quote, if we don't stop him now in Ukraine, he will soon be invading other countries, including NATO countries. And the line, quote, we cannot let fear of World War II keep us from doing what is necessary to defeat Putin in Ukraine and put a stop to his aggression. Or we will just give in to him every time he makes another aggressive move or issues an aggressive threat. Look, people should read the article to see how Bob Avakian answers these arguments, but a big part of his answer is to go to the reality. So, Raymond, could you speak to the reality of the strategic interests of each side in this inter-imperialist conflict?
Yeah. You know, the way this is portrayed in the media and by the U.S. rulers is that this conflict began on February 24th, 2022, when Putin, this madman, invaded the Ukraine. This was an act of unprovoked aggression, as it's described. But actually, there's a whole history behind this. You know, over the last 30 years since the collapse of the former Soviet Union, the United States and its military alliance, NATO, that's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which the U.S. founded and which the U.S. dominates, that military alliance has sought to absorb countries of Eastern Europe that were former parts of the old Soviet bloc, to bring them into this alliance and to put more pressure on Russia, to prevent Russia from emerging as a contender for world power and influence, a contender and a challenger to the U.S.'s dominant position in the world imperialist order, of which the United States is the main beneficiary. And between 1999 and 2004, 10 countries were brought into the NATO alliance, which are close to or directly border Russia. And Russia has been moving and acting to prevent this encirclement, and at the same time to reassert its strength, its influence in the world, and to establish a rival pole of power in Europe, Central Asia, and and in the Middle East. So you see this contention between two imperialist powers, two empires of exploitation and plunder. And Ukraine now is the key prize in this contest between these two imperialist powers. On the one hand, the U.S. will complete its encirclement of Russia on the east by gaining influence and control in Ukraine, and it has done so through efforts to back different forces. It's been sending economic assistance, and Russia, in turn, is moving to reabsorb Ukraine, to absorb it into its imperialist bloc in order to strengthen its hand in the world. And right now, this contest is a proxy war between the United States and Russia. The United States is sending arms, it's giving intelligence, it's imposing sanctions on Russia to cripple the Russian economy. And Russia, in turn, is directly inside. A proxy war is a war between two states, but they are not directly fighting each other. In this case, the Russians are invading Ukraine. It's a savage invasion. And the United States is fighting Russia through Ukraine. And it's not about democracy in the Ukraine or the well-being and welfare of the Ukrainian people. They are cannon fodder in the U.S. efforts to encircle Russia. And right now, this is getting ever more dangerous because the suggestions coming from Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, to establish a no-fly zone, that would mean that if U.S. forces were hit, then that would escalate. If Russia moves in and escalates and threatens this regime in toto, the U.S. is now moving in a position where it will directly get involved. So this is an extremely dangerous situation, and it's one which the people of the world have no interest in being part of or being drawn into as supporters and backers and foot soldiers and, yes, cannon fodder for these two imperialist powers.
Well, I think that last point, in terms of what's actually happening in Ukraine now and where it could go and what's being advocated is very important. We do know right now that this heavy armament that the NATO bloc, the U.S. is putting into Ukraine, is having an effect. In fact, there's reports, we don't know how true they are, of explosions within Russia now. There is, most dangerously, there is a statement from the U.S. Secretary of Defense that a strategic objective of the U.S. is to weaken the Russian military overall, not just expel them from Ukraine, but to weaken the Russian military. This is actually an attempt to protract the war, to try to bleed Russia. And at the same time, the Russian defense minister has said, well, you do all this, and you keep bringing these heavy weapons in, including very sophisticated drones, and we are going to consider, if we feel threatened enough, to use tactical nuclear weapons. So there's a question of design, and there's also a question of accelerated accident, where, as you pointed out, one or the other side could mistakenly hit a strategic asset of the others, including people. And even the U.S. putting an ambassador into Kyiv it could potentially be a flashpoint. So look, we don't have all night on this. But I did want you to ask you about the importance of us saying, no U.S. NATO war with Russia, no World War III, and why this isn't just a nice stand to take, but actually has some real immediacy in the world today.
Look, this is an exceedingly dangerous situation. Andy, you just pointed to the fact that this is rapidly escalating. It's not just the increasing military aid that the United States is giving, but more intelligence support, training. And the fact is that the danger of all-out direct confrontation between the U.S. and Russia is growing, and growing exceedingly fast. And the danger here is not just the confrontation becomes direct now. Instead of a proxy war, it's a direct contest between Russia and the United States. But the fact remains, and it is one that cannot be overemphasized that these two imperialist powers, these two empires of exploitation, between the two of them, own and control 90% of the nuclear warheads in the world. And 2,000 of those nuclear weapons are on high operational alert that can be deployed in battle zones of this war and in the zones in which it could rapidly spread. And we are talking about the potential use of, first, tactical nuclear weapons, which are defined as low-yield nuclear weapons. And that's kind of an oxymoron. Low yield doesn't mean, not destructive. These weapons bring with them extraordinary damage to human life, to the environment, and that use of tactical nuclear weapons, which the Russians said are on the table. And let's not forget that the United States was the first and the only country to use nuclear weapons, and has said that those nuclear weapons are an integral part of its military arsenal. Well, those tactical weapons, nuclear weapons, with all the destruction they wreak, can also become part of an escalatory logic towards the use of strategic nuclear weapons, which pose an existential threat to humanity and to this planet. That's how serious this is. And that's the urgency of this, that we have to act to stop this war, this conflict.
Okay, Raymond, we're going to have to wrap up. I just want to conclude with two things. That in terms of this point on the danger of this escalated into a nuclear war is why we say it's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct as one of the key slogans of May 1st. And to realize that will take the preparations today for making an actual revolution in this country, and to be working towards that while we are acting on exactly what you've just said. And I want to just conclude this segment on these slogans for May 1st with this from the article World War III and Dangerous Idiocy. Bob Avakian concludes that article with this, quote, "All this emphasizes why it is vitally important for the masses of people in this country and other countries aligned with it, as well as in Russia, for people everywhere to finally and fully wake up now and recognize the real and profoundly heavy stakes involved and act in accordance with our actual interests, the interests of all of humanity, demanding that this war in Ukraine and the involvement, direct and indirect, of the imperialists on both sides of this war be stopped before it not only causes greater suffering for the people of Ukraine, but possibly escalates into a far more terrible conflict, which causes massive destruction and death on a whole other level, and even possibly poses a threat to the very existence of humanity itself." End quote. So, Raymond, good night. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Next, I want to talk about a really important problem that we need to solve together with you that could also be a lot of fun, but it is a serious problem. We just finished a segment on this show that spoke of the real and present danger of potentially a wider war, maybe World War III, even possibly something that involved nuclear weapons. And for those who watch this show all the time, you know about all the things we talk about here: police brutality, taking away the right of women to be able to have an abortion in this country, which forced motherhood equals female enslavement, the plight of the immigrants and refugees here and around the world. All of this needs to be redressed, needs to be changed, needs to be solved. And this 100th episode that is coming next week is a time where we're going to launch a campaign to solve what is a real problem of this revolution, a problem that bears directly on whether or not there will be a future fit for human beings, or even if there's a future at all. We've made that case already in today's program. The problem is the contradiction between the great need that the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show fills, the tremendous strength of the understanding of the problem humanity faces and the solution in a real revolution for the emancipation of humanity, and all this delivered in an accessible way with content that has a high degree of visual and sound quality, that mixes in interviews with a diversity of people and has music and culture and history. And yet, the problem we need to solve is a still too low level of viewership. And believe me, we appreciate the hundreds of you who watch every week and the 1,000 or so views of the show each week. But seriously, if we're going to change the world, thousands of people need to be watching this every week. There's nothing else like it. Starting with the 100th show, we need to try to get to 2,000 viewers every week. And very soon after that, 5,000 and 10,000. The situation that humanity faces demands this. There's no place else where people are going to get the message, the content, and the leadership that we provide in this show, and particularly in that we bring to you the new communism and the leadership of Avakian that's charted a whole new course and framework for human emancipation, learning from the revolutions of the past, but breaking with things that had held us back. Now there's a chance for a real revolution in this, the most dangerous empire in human history, that if we could actually overthrow the system that rules this country, we could make tremendous changes and we'd have a shot at saving the planet from environmental devastation. But this needs you. Possibly you're watching this and say, well, who am I? I'm just getting involved in this. I don't know how to build that audience, or maybe my opinion doesn't count. No, that's not true. That's bullshit. Everybody who's watching this show has something to contribute, something to say. And we need to hear from you this week. We need your testimonials. We need your questions. Film them on your cell phone camera. Write them in to the revcoms@gmail.com. Send it there. You can DM us on social media. This is the time we have to make this leap. This war in Ukraine is probably going to be protracted, growing more dangerous. You're needed now. So I'm being serious about this because I tell you, I'll have to be honest, I was disappointed. We put this call out last week and only if we got a few testimonials and some of them were very moving, but we need more. And it's not just the testimonials, it's the ideas, the proposals for how we can make a big campaign of this over the next months. We need to grow the viewership of this. I'm going to play a video we showed last week. I think it's a lot of fun, but it moves very fast, so I think we'd all benefit from seeing it again. That gives you ideas as to how to be a part of this.
Are you watching this show for the first time, or are you a returning viewer? Do you value what the RNL Show brings you every single week? Be a part of growing this audience to impact all corners of the internet and all of society. Here's how. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to be alerted when new episodes drop. Watch the premiere on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. The more you watch, the more the almighty algorithm is pleased.
We have technology.
So stay for the whole episode and be sure to rewatch, not only to boost the content, but most importantly, to absorb the analysis and leadership being given. Smash that thumbs up button and give us feedback. Get in the comments section. What stood out to you? What made you look at the world differently? What questions do you have? What do you want to see addressed in the next episode? Spread this episode and other episodes everywhere, online and in real life. Design a stencil with the show title and URL and go to town. Host RNL Show watch parties on Thursday nights. Take to the interwebs. Spread links to the show in your online community. Twitter, Reddit subgroups about the environment, Facebook groups opposing patriarchy. Get this show everywhere. Tell your friends, coworkers, and neighbors to watch. Tell them why this show is important to you and all of humanity. Tell them that there's nothing else like this show which brings people the real, cold, hard truth about this country and its crimes, the reality of the actual problem facing humanity, this system of capitalism, imperialism, and the real solution, revolution, and how to make this revolution. Make a video saying why you watch and why others should too. Post it on your social media and tag @TheRevComs. Your video might be featured on the 100th episode of the RNL Show. And finally, become a Patreon at patreon.com/therevcoms. Support the show financially so that we can not just keep making this content, but making it possible for this content to get far and wide. Got ideas for other ways to do this? Good. Send us your thoughts on what you've been doing to spread the show. DM at @therevcoms on all social media platforms or email therevcoms@gmail.com.
Yes.
Let's make a leap in the viewership
Yes.
for the 100th episode and continue building the audience for the Revolution Nothing Less show together.
Okay, look, that video was a lot of fun, but there's a few things I want to pull out here. First of all, as part of getting this viewership up, you need to watch the whole episode at once. I can't tell you why, but that really affects the YouTube algorithm. If you sit down and watch the show from beginning to end, that moves it up so that it appears in the menu on the side for other people, okay? If you comment below during the week and there begins to be a debate there, that also helps popularize the show on YouTube, which is the second biggest search engine in the world at this point. Watch the show again and again, because there's deep content to it, and it also will build viewership, although we're looking for a lot of unique viewers. Give us feedback by hitting the like button and by writing comments, as I said below. Subscribe to our channel. Become a Patreon. One of the things that we've been emphasizing is people getting together with their friends and with the RevComs, if you're in a city where the RevComs are, and watching the show together with others. If it's your family, your coworkers, your homies, anybody, watch the show together and let us know what you think. Comment right during the show and then write us later. There's a phone number you can call too. We want to hear from you, but watching the show together, critiquing it, critiquing how you've been thinking about things and how we put it in this show. All of this is part of growing the audience for the show. And then spread it on social media. Take some of what you watch in the show and let others know. Do duets of our social media on TikTok. Post it on Facebook. We've got to get this all over the place. And we are still looking for designers who will help us develop ideas for an actual logo for the show that would appear on the microphones on the show and that would appear on posters and stickers all over town. But for right now, as you saw in the video, you can go cut a stencil yourself. You can chalk on the sidewalk. Everywhere people go, everywhere people are facing important struggles, they should be saying, did you see this week's RNL show? Well, you should. So that's what I wanted to say about this. We're looking forward to next week, the 100th anniversary of this show, the RNL show. It's the 100th show. And from there, we're going to start this campaign, and we're really going to bust a move this spring and into this summer to really grow the viewership of the show and to expand the actual crew for the show so that we can have more people filming episodes in different cities, get contributions from you. We need more editors. And with all of that, I just want to say we're looking forward to seeing you next week on the 100th show and hearing from you this week. If you're going to send something to the show, you can send it in at any time, but it's best to get it in here by Monday, May 2nd. So with that, we're going to go to our next segment. And this is exciting. My co-host, Sunsara Taylor, is here in Los Angeles. So we're going to be welcoming her in just a moment. As promised, our next segment is on the struggle for abortion rights as the Supreme Court is poised to strip away the right to abortion for women. And as we've been reporting over the last months, the organization that my co-host, Sunsara Taylor, is from, Rise Up for Abortion Rights, has been out in the field and calling for a week of struggle, a week of action on May 8th to 14th. And so we want to get into, look who's here.
Hey, Andy. Back in Los Angeles. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to see you again. And if you thought that was corny, you ain't seen nothing yet. No.
You're messing with me.
I'm messing with you. But actually, I'm really happy you're back.
Thank you.
I'm really happy you're back. And we're going to get into this.
It was his idea that I would walk in from off stage.
I had another idea, but we didn't go there. Okay, so it's a surprise that she's back here for a short while because she's been on the road quite a bit, not only in New York City, but last week we on the show we had video of you and a delegation from Rise Up for Abortion Rights in Louisville, Kentucky. This was actually this is a really good segment last week. Go back and watch episode number 98. One of the things that we got in later from that trip you took was some news reports. So you guys were on the news in Louisville, Kentucky, and we want to just show you one of those reports now before we get into our segment.
Protesters on both sides of the abortion debate collided in downtown Louisville today. The group Rise Up for Abortion Rights was met by members of local churches on the front steps of Metro Hall. Wave News reporter David Ochoa was at the rally and has more from both sides.
Yeah, the event was put together by Rise Up for Abortion Rights to protest the abortion law vetoed by Republicans last week. They were met by counter-protesters who heard about the rally a couple of days ago. And what was meant to be a one-sided affair turned into a combination of equally passionate protests.
Abortion on demand! And without apology!
The rally was put together in response to the state law that effectively eliminated abortions in Kentucky. The law has been temporarily blocked by a federal judge, and the news broke as the protests began. And organizers say while it's a win for today, it's not a solution.
But women were told that their lives, their plans, their hopes for their future didn't count for anything. They were going to be forced to have children against their will, whether they wanted to or not.
Their pro-abortion chants and slogans were met with shouts from the opposition.
We're out here to speak for children, for the children of Louisville, Kentucky.
These little children are precious gifts from God.
Nolan says he isn't surprised that the law was blocked. He called it weak.
We need to totally abolish abortion. We need to outlaw, we need to be a sanctuary city that protects the lives of children.
But there are people who think this way, who sit in the state legislatures, who sit on the courts, who are gunning for the rights and the lives of women, and they have as much contempt for women's lives as these people do.
There were just over 4,000 abortions performed in Kentucky in 2020. Over half were done by women aged 20 to 29.
When abortion was illegal, women died. Women's lives were shattered, and we will not go back.
News of the law being blocked, Kentucky Planned Parenthood CEO Rebecca Gibran said in a statement, quote, "This is a win, but it is only the first step. We're prepared to fight for our patients' rights to basic health in court and to continue doing everything in our power to ensure abortion access is permanently secured in Kentucky." Rise Up for Abortion Rights is planning a week of action for abortion rights next month, ending with a unified day of protest on May 14th. Live in the studio, David Ochoa, Wave News.
So, Sunsara, the Supreme Court is on track to take away the right to abortion this spring. And as the reporter in the story noted, that Rise Up for Abortion Rights has called for this week of resistance on May 8th to May 14th, including, and this is important, a unified day of mass protests on May 14th. This is a protest in the streets, not online, in the streets. So could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yes, so starting May 8th on Sunday, Rise Up for Abortion Rights is calling for a mass week of action and protest, acts big and small across this country among everybody who does not want to see women forced to have children against their will. Everybody has a role to play on the campuses, in the streets, in the arts, in the churches, synagogues, and mosques, and most of all, in the streets. There are actually student walkouts planned. There's going to be actions by Spanish speakers at the churches on Mother's Day, May 8th. There's going to be days of big banner drops, like the green bandana-shaped banner drops, and all kinds of ways of spreading the word across this country and challenging everybody to get into the fight to stop the Supreme Court from taking away the right to abortion. And this is going to culminate on May 14th, Saturday, as you mentioned, in a unified day of mass protests across this country to declare, we refuse to let the Supreme Court take away the right to abortion on demand and without apology.
So, Sunsara, what is the main purpose of this week?
Most people have no idea that the Supreme Court is on track to take away abortion rights. And they don't know what this would mean either for the lives and future of women and girls across this country. They have no idea the enslavement of women that this will bring, the shattering of lives, the foreclosing of dreams, the violence that women will be trapped in, abusive relations, when they're forced to have children against their will, and the many other ways that they'll be told that their dreams, their ambitions, their plans, their physical safety don't count for anything. The state is going to force them to have children against their will. So we have to wake people up to this emergency. That's one of the big missions of this week of action, for people to get out in every realm of society and wake people up and sound the alarm. But that's only one part of it. We also need to let people know, like it says on the Rise Up for Abortion Rights website, only the people can stop this. People need to know the role that they have to play in taking to the streets and joining this struggle. There is no recourse right now to stop this Supreme Court. It's got a supermajority of fascist judges. There's no recourse in the normal official political channels of this system, in its elections, in its courts, in its normal workings. And so we have to rise up and bring people into the streets outside those channels, and massive resistance that creates such an upheaval in this society that the Supreme Court has to recalculate what it thinks it can get away with. This is an institution, the Supreme Court and the rulers of this country overall. They are political institutions, and they do calculate their perceived legitimacy in the eyes of the people and in the eyes of the people of the world and other governments around the world. And if there is enough upheaval in this country of people drawing a line and saying, we refuse to let this happen, we have a fighting chance to stop this great atrocity. And so the week of action is aimed at giving people forms all week long to join this struggle, to wake others up, to shake others up, and then culminate in a mass day of unified protest on May 14th to really say, we're not going to let this go down. Women need abortion on demand and without apology. And we're going to do this through getting out there, like I said, in unignorable ways, kind of like what we did down in Kentucky. We have to go out where people are not fighting this, they don't know about it, and we need to do this in unignorable ways that wake them up and call them into this struggle.
Sunsara, this week is very important, and particularly your point of we have to get out very, very broadly and continue to stir the mass of people up who don't know about this. There's just millions of women and young women whose whole future's ahead of them. If they knew about this, they would act. But I want to just make this point. We should not underestimate what we have already accomplished. Things are sharpening up with the state laws that we've reported on in previous episodes of this show. I mean, really horrific things, basically outlawing abortion and penalizing doctors and deputizing any citizen to go after anybody who helps with abortion. So things are sharpening up at the state level. The Supreme Court is approaching its deadline. And we're going out to lots of people. But already what you've done has had an effect. There's already all of this combined, not just what you've done, but what you've done has created a certain tension among those forces who should be in the streets. Mm-hmm. The forces who should be in the streets and have not been, but say, no, we're planning for a post-Roe world, are beginning to talk of, well, maybe we need to get in the streets. Well, maybe we'll just go online. But we need to put two hands on their back while going out broadly, because if we mobilize masses of people, that will compel these forces to be in the streets with us. Now, listen, it's very important, and we want to say as a matter of principle and a matter of necessity, that if you are a person or if you are an organization who supports the right to abortion, if you are opposed to the Supreme Court stripping away this right, there is no moral reason, there is no political reason, there is no objective reason why you should be standing aside from the struggle just because you think it's going to be a difficult one to win. Everybody has to come out and unite as one around this. This is what has been done, and you brought this out all through Latin America, all through South America. That's how they've won these struggles. But not here in the United States. That needs to change. And what you are doing, Sunsara, is part of making that change. And you should not underestimate, no one should underestimate the importance of what has already been achieved. And yes, how far we have to go, but the import of what you're doing. So I did want to ask you, you have this new beautiful green bandana. This is not just a Western one, but it actually has a slogan on it.
Well, as you were mentioning, there was a massive struggle in Latin America. Started in Argentina, spread to Colombia and Mexico. Other places have taken it up. But in those three countries, through the mass struggle of women in the streets and really challenging all sections of society. They decriminalized abortion, where it had been criminalized and women were sent to prison for miscarriages. And they did it, the symbol they took up was this green bandana. And it became a symbol, first in Argentina, it spread and really went all over the world. This is a symbol of struggling in the streets for abortion rights. And we've taken it up here, we're popularizing it here. And this is something that should be spread all throughout the week of action, the week of resistance. And people need to show which side you're on. And we just got new ones printed that say riseuppforabortionrights.org, hashtag green for abortion. You can get yours at the riseuppforabortionrights.org website, or you can get a green bandana wherever you can find one, make your own. But tell people what it means, wear it every day, and spread them. This is a form of struggle. So, yeah.
All right, Sunsara. Well, good to have you back in the studio. And this is an important struggle. It has everything to do with May 1st and changing the world and celebrating the struggle and being part of the struggle and getting organized to stop this attack on a fundamental right for half of humanity. And it's a fundamental part, an integral part, I should say, of the struggle to forge a people who want to be rid of this system and fight for a radically different and better world where all of humanity, men and women, differently gendered people, all nationalities, all over the world, could build a future worthy of humanity. So with that, we'll see you next week.
Very good.
Two years ago, for young Black as well as Latino youth, seeing that Minneapolis pig Derek Chauvin kneel on the neck of George Floyd, smirking while suffocating the life out of him with no regard for his humanity, was confirmation of their lived reality of the pig terror that dogs and haunts them every day. Every Black family, no matter whether middle class, well-to-do, or like most, struggling just to get by, live with the constant terror of their sons and daughters encountering pigs who brutalize with impunity. The wanton murder of George Floyd aroused a generation of all nationalities and hues to take to the streets for weeks to demand justice. The 9-minute excruciating cell phone video on top of so many past cell phone videos over 2 decades was the last straw for many. But this was not the first time a video ignited this nation. Perhaps the first time was 30 years ago this week on April 29th, 1992, here in Los Angeles, not more than 2 miles from where I am recording this, when this city, the second largest in the U.S., erupted in the largest rebellion in U.S. history. A little more than a year earlier, a 29-year-old Black man, Rodney King, was pulled over for speeding, and the LAPD and the highway patrol officers flooded the scene, and over the next few minutes, they engaged in what racist white mobs have done to Black people since the first slave ship discharged its cargo. It happens all the time. But what was different, what was new, was that in a nearby apartment, a man had a video cam, which at that time were just beginning to become small enough and affordable enough that regular people could have one. He went out on his terrace and filmed excruciating minute after minute of these 7 cops mercilessly beating and tasing Rodney King. And every time Rodney King tried to get up, they kicked and clubbed and crushed the bones in his face and broke his teeth, all the while laughing. This time, there was video evidence in black and white. People thought that surely this time there would be justice, but as has happened countless times before and still fucking happens today, the words for the almost all-white jury rang out.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant not guilty of the crime of assault by force likely to produce great bodily injury and with a deadly weapon.
With the verdict on the 4 cops broadcast on national TV, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty for these Klansmen in blue. And thus was born a rebellion that shook this nation from coast to coast. Today, we remember and honor that rebellion, and we point to the way forward. So first, we're going to show in this segment a montage of the Los Angeles Rebellion of 1992. And then we're going to show a video of Joe Veale, a revolutionary, a RevCom, who was in the Black Panther Party when he was younger in the 60s. And this is a speech that Joe Veale gave in 2019, in June of 2019, on the back of a pickup truck at the site of the beginning of the LA Rebellion at Florence and Normandy. Then we're going to show you a clip from a film of a talk by Bob Avakian from 2012, Revolution, Nothing Less, where he speaks about the Los Angeles Rebellion. And then I'm going to have Joe Veale here in the studio with me. So let's go to the montage of the 1992 LA Rebellion.
Okay, here we go. We're going to go in deeper and show you the core of this thing, what's going on. Let's go this way.
No justice, no justice, no peace. There's no clips down here. There's no blood down here. There's just concerned citizens down here that don't like the way the system is done. This is what we're talking about.
We got a crowd of about 400 people at least over here. Very angry people. They are throwing signs. They have taken over Los Angeles streets. And again, the situation is very volatile. People keep on taunting the officers, throwing things at them.
Ron, is this an organized demonstration? Or
well, I think it started out as an organized demonstration, and then it grew and grew. And now it has been for the past hour or so pretty much a standoff here.
You better let go now. Okay, Michael, things have escalated dramatically in the last 15 minutes. That is the third flag that you are looking at. They have burned.
Where you're looking at one of the Parker Center guard stations. One of the guard stations, they have taken it over, they are breaking the windows. We are asking people to stay out of this area.
Police officers trying to seal off the street. The group basically just marching right down the middle of the street.
It is a multiracial crowd. It is not predominantly any color.
There's a fellow who's lighting the trees,
yes.
Is he not?
Yes, that's what
yeah, going along block to block. And
we can see
nobody's stopping. I mean, one tree after another.
These bearded palms with the dead fronds hanging down, great fuel for an arsonist.
Some of the officers a little while ago, and they really don't know what to do right now. There are TV cameras all over, there are people all over, and I don't think anybody really knows what to do and how to get this under control.
Everybody across this country People in other parts of the world saw this video where the police, 4 of them, swinging their baton like a baseball player swings a Louisville Slugger. Again, beating Rodney King again and again, over and over, as they make racist jokes and laugh as they beat him and torture him again and again. And then on top of this, people thinking that now we've caught them on video, so now finally they're going to have to pay for the bullshit and for the brutality that they always bring down on black people. Right. And as well as they bring down on Latino people. And now that we have them on video for the first time, they're going to be held to pay for that. But what happened? They let those pigs off. Right. Again. Bullshit. It was like pouring salt on an open wound. But right here, people rose up and they fought back and they hit back. And when black people hit back, they were immediately joined with immigrants and Latino people as well. I remember riding through LA, seeing the graffiti, Black and Mexicans Unite, United Tonight, 4/29/92, rolling through LA as these pigs was running and the city was on fire. Look, I was in the Black Panther Party back in the 60s. People had a lot of heart. People had a lot of nerve. People was bold. But they did not have scientific method and approach that we have today. And the reason that we have that is because of the work of Avakian. He has developed a scientific method and approach. He has developed it for us, for humanity, for the oppressed and exploited people, and for all humanity. He's developed it and given it to us. And it's up to us to take that up. Take that up so we can put an end to the unnecessary suffering that people go through here and all over the world. Right. Look. We do not get leaders like Avakian. We do not get those kind of leaders. The oppressed and exploited people in history, we rarely get a leader like B.A. Someone who's given their heart and soul to the cause of the masses to get free, who has brought forward a whole approach, a whole method and approach that we can take up to emancipate ourselves and to emancipate all of humanity.
Let's go back again to the LA Rebellion. Sometimes it's forgotten, and we need to not forget how hard so many of the people caught up in a lot of bad shit tried to break out of that at that time. From the first night of the rebellion to sometime in its aftermath. There was the graffiti on the wall in LA the first night of the rebellion. Blacks and Mexicans together tonight. Think about what that signified and how significant that was. And then in the aftermath of the rebellion, you had all these attempts at forging unity, overcoming these deep divisions among the people that had grown over years with bitter antagonism. There were unity picnics. There were attempts at unity conferences all around the country. The police would attack the unity picnics. I remember seeing a picture at that time of two young guys, one a Blood and one a Crip, shortly after the rebellion with their arms around each other. Do we understand the significance of that and how much that means? These are youth who from a very early age are taught that they count for nothing and deserve nothing but a boot up their ass and a bullet in their brain, or a long time in jail. And so you have nothing, and you're told to expect nothing. And so you try to get something by carving out a little space on a street in a neighborhood that doesn't belong to you. Doesn't really mean anything, but it's all that you can feel, that you can plant yourself in and find some meaning and purpose in. And then there are other people 2 blocks away. Whether you're Mexicans and in your rival gangs, or you're black in your rival gangs, or Vietnamese, or whatever. People 2 blocks away just like you. But if they come in the little territory that you've staked out your hood, the rules are they're slipping, you got to shoot them. You shoot them. So then they have to come back and kill you and your family and your friends. And on it goes back and forth for years and years. People kept like in cages. And here they took the step, after all these years of this bitter experience of friends and loved ones being killed on both sides, back and forth. And the meaning of their putting their arms around each other and trying to forge something different, but the system wouldn't have it and couldn't have it. They attacked the unity picnics, time and again. But more than that, the program that these people, these youth and others who, OGs and the gangs and whatever, tried to come up with was a program for reform, for entrepreneurialism that couldn't work under the system. There was no room for it. And so it didn't go anywhere, and then many went back to the old ways, and youth coming up fell back and, were sort of channeled into those ways. But they tried so hard. And so genuinely heroically. And the problem is that under the system, there's no basis for overcoming these kind of divisions. But in striving for and building a movement for revolution, there is the basis, and this is what we have to be fighting for, to bring forward the full potential of these and other youth and other sections of oppressed people, men and women, to be the backbone and driving force, and win them through a lot of struggle to be that backbone and driving force of this revolution. And where this happens, when they do make this great leap to becoming part of the revolution, and yes, it is a great leap, then among others in the communities they come from, and much more broadly among other sections of society as well, people have to be rallied in different ways and forms to encourage and back up these youth who take this great step of joining the ranks of the revolution, so that they can not only continue to get more and more deeply involved themselves, but can play a key part in bringing forward many others. We need to find whatever the forms are to give life and expression to this. We need to find the forms for people who are not going to be on the front lines actively out there fighting the power, but are contributing to the revolution and can contribute in many other ways, to back up these youth, to say in ways that have meaning, we are proud of our youth when they step forward into the ranks of the revolution. We need to even develop ceremonies that express this. We need to develop a collective culture that gives life and meaning to this. And there's much sentiment out there that can be tapped in this direction. Everybody wants the youth to do better. Even the church-going ladies. These boys out here, they're not doing anything good. They need to do something better. They need to get to Jesus. Well, no, they don't need to get to Jesus. They need to get with the revolution. But even the church-going ladies can be appreciative of this. And this is not just in one community or among one section, but much more broadly. And this is a way that we can implement what's talked about in that strategy statement of developing growing cores of people that constitute relatively small numbers now, dozens here, but then become hundreds and become the thousands that, as we put it in that statement, are actively and openly with the revolution and are influencing millions among all different sections of the people. And being prepared and preparing themselves to get to the point where they can lead those millions when a revolutionary situation has been brought into being through the workings of this system itself and the ongoing conscious and consistent work of revolutionaries. And people are looking for leadership that has an actual program and has the actual orientation and determination to fight through to actually bring about a radical change. Now the question is, if we get to that point where there is a revolutionary situation and millions of people are looking and are determined to search out a radical way forward, in that situation, when people are looking desperately for a different way and for leadership to give this an organized expression around a concrete program, will there be a revolutionary force that has been built strong enough, is experienced enough, organized enough, grounded enough in the necessary science to seize on this and fight through all the obstacles to take things where they need to go?
That was Bob Avakian from the 2012 talk and film, BA Speaks Revolution Nothing Less, going deeply in this part of the speech into the unity that was built in the course of that rebellion between people who had been set against each other by the workings of the system, the situation they found them in. We're going to get more deeply into that now because we have with us at the RNL studio Joe Veale, who is a revolutionary. In the 1960s, he was part of the Black Panther Party, and into the 1970s when he became a revolutionary communist and follower of Bob Avakian. So, join me in welcoming Joe Veale to the RNL studio.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
All right. Well, Joe's been on the show before, and he has a lot of insight into this because, Joe, the day the rebellion kicks off, you and some of your comrades jump in a car in Oakland and then drive down to Los Angeles. So tell us, what was the significance of going down here? And what was a rebellion that was beginning to be attacked like crazy on the media and has continued to be maligned by those forces in power, as well as all sorts of reformists. But you guys came down here and got into, what was it like? What was the mood of the people?
It was great, and, it was their resistance. We couldn't, resist jumping in the car and coming, right down immediately and stuff. And, and jumping in and taking part, with the masses, like standing up in rebellion. It was a really heroic uprising after what had happened to Rodney King, the brutal beating, and them like letting those pigs like walk in that like way, So we came and we immediately, it was a powerful attraction like for us and so we just jumped in the car and came down and but we brought revolution, that's what we was bringing, the need for like revolution, to get rid of this system that created those conditions that led to that brutal beating of Rodney King, led to the brutal treatment of black people historically under this system, other oppressed people. So we came to, to take part in that and to bring the revolutionary solution, the revolutionary leadership and stuff like to that and everything. And, and it was great. It was great. And it was very powerful because the social order that led to what happened to Rodney King had broken down completely. And the masses were in the streets and stuff. And that's what we jumped into like with them. Like I just like said, to bring like revolution, that revolutionary solution and stuff like to that.
First off, that was the second rebellion in Los Angeles. 27 years before, there'd been a rebellion in Watts, and the same conditions were there and had intensified and created that rebellion. Here we are 30 years later, and some of this same situation presents today. This is the whole point, that this is built into the system. And then when people rose up, we got a sense from the video, a sense from what you're talking about, that ferocious joy. But Bob Avakian was talking about the truce that came, that the unity that was built and how precious that was, and then the truces that came up. And then you were telling me before the RevComs went right into the midst of that. And yeah, it was controversial. There's some stories you had about the housing projects and whatnot. I think it'd be important to tell people some of this.
Yeah, and we went to all the truce meetings, all the picnics, all the conferences, to bring, the message of revolution, the need for that and the leadership for that. Some of it was very welcomed by by people. When we first got here, we had no place to stay and everything. And we told, we just went to the masses and told them what we were about and everything. And some places people embraced us and put us up, gave us place to stay and everything. I just remember one of the projects in Watts, and, being out late at night one night and them coming, people walking down, these young women walking down the streets with a woman comrade of mine and saying that, over there in the PJs, talking about another project in Watts, they got the NAACP staying with them. But over here, we got the communists staying with us. And they were very proud of that and everything, but at the same time, some people, they did not welcome us and stuff. And, I remember, being approached and stuff and people saying, get the fuck out of here with that revolution. We don't need that. And they were on a whole other tip in terms of, that gangster life and stuff, but trying to, maybe get some legitimate backing for what they were trying to pursue and stuff at that time. And I mean, them stepping to us and saying, not only what I just said, but then they would, and they would be, are y'all ready to die for this revolution? And they would be strapped. And our response was, yes, we are, because we represent the masses of people. What's in the interest of the masses of people, not only here, but all over the world. And that you should be, that's what the revolution is about. And you should be about that too. And stuff, instead of this other shit that you talking about right here and stuff. And I think that our response to that, it threw them off. They was expecting some other kind of response. But we was we was real. The revolution is real. I mean, we were serious and we were real. The rebellion was real and it was righteous. And what we was bringing to the rebellion was real and was righteous. And people needed to relate to it. And we wasn't going to back down in the face of anything in terms of being able to bring this out to the masses.
Well, I think now here we are 30 years later, people still being gunned down by the police, people still being, and in fact, since the rebellion, mass incarceration, the situation for the masses of people is worse, if anything, including the fact that people have lost some hope. But we also had to go through some summation about all of this and what it's going to actually take and how do we actually relate to this. There was, and I think you brought out, and we saw in the videos, that saying that was popular at that time, when now a rebellion's not a revolution, but there was the saying that when revolution has its day, people see another way, and you had that unity, but then that unity falls apart because of the workings of the system. That's what Bob Avakian was bringing out. But I'd like to talk a little bit about, what has been summed up, especially by Bob Avakian in the new communism, the new synthesis of communism, about how we actually have to go at this, the development and strategy to understand that we need to fight the power and transform the people for revolution. And I think we should talk a little bit about this because now we're in a situation that's unique, which is that now there's, as he's analyzed and we brought forth in this show, there is the possibility in the current situation that a revolutionary situation where it would actually be possible to make a revolution exists. But we need those people he spoke about who are that force of people who are revolutionaries, who don't see it as I'm going to get into this for mine or for me, but I'm going to get into this for the revolution. So what have we learned about that struggle that has been deepened over the last decade since?
Well, what we really learned, from Bob Avakian especially, is that we really have to go much harder and much deeper with that kind of struggle that you're identifying with these masses of people, much more harder and deeper around, people have to change their outlook, the way that they're, even approaching when they're thinking about revolution. It's not for revolution is not about serving myself or serving my homies serving my community. It's about like freeing the people, freeing the masses of people, and freeing like all humanity. It's not about like, trying to get yours or get mine or whatever, like under this system. That's a whole different, revolution is a whole different way of understanding and approaching and dealing with, reality, how it really works. Because what we ran into, just to be a little bit more specific, is that, like some people, really like thought, some people still think that way now, that, that they were going to be able to get some kind of government funding and be able to, to back them in some kind of program, whether that's for their own personal or for their little clique or for their neighborhood or whatever and stuff like that. And that they were going to be able to, set up some kind of little capitalist enterprise that was going to be able to make and generate like money. But they was going to be doing it and be good and kind and treat people good, that in some kind of way they don't have to act. And they would be able to act outside of the dictates of the capitalist dynamics of making like profit at the, at the expense of the masses of people and stuff. And so like, so that was some of the struggle that we were like waging, like with people that, around like for what and for whom is this revolution is about, and what are we fighting like for what and for whom, what kind of world, what kind of society. I think, initially we did a lot about like fighting the power, fighting the system, even, but, and what we learned, but we have to transform. People have to transform while they fight, transform their thinking for a revolution. And the content of revolution is emancipating humanity, and that's for a whole new world, a whole new society and a whole new world beyond the bounds and the dictates of this capitalist system, and with all the divisions that it keeps people like pitted against each other, keep us like fighting each other, different neighborhoods, different sets like fighting each other, competing for different jobs, competing to go to school, competing to get in this position over somebody, stepping over somebody else to be able to advance or whatever and stuff. All of that is in the dictates of this capitalist system. And the revolution, and that's what has to like change. That's a trap. And that's what has got us like trapped, what has like the masses like of humanity like trapped, thinking along those systems way of thinking and stuff. And what we really like need to get, think in a whole different way that corresponds to a whole different way of organizing society and human beings who make up society and how they interact and relate to one another and build a society based upon those kind of relations, which is possible today in the world.
Well, I think those are really important points. And for those who are for the first time seeing this, learning about the 1992 Los Angeles Rebellion, and for those who've forgotten or it's receded in your memory or you've absorbed some of that summation that this was just a horror, when you see the masses of people rising up like that, that ferocious joy and that unity that's being built, everything that you've just been talking about, Joe, that you can see that possibility is something that people desire. And since that rebellion, through the leadership of Bob Avakian, a strategy has been developed to actually make a revolution that could win. There's a film, Why We Need an Actual Revolution and How We Could Really Make Revolution. There's a pamphlet, How We Could Really Win a Revolution. There's a lot of work that's been done. So for anybody watching this show who looks at this rebellion and says, yeah, but what can we do about it? What you can do about it is get into BA, get into this revolution, find out about it, and then we got to get busy because there's a time now when we could actually make a revolution. So, Joe, I want to thank you for being on the show on this 30th anniversary of the rebellion, and I hope people come out on May 1st and find out more about the RevComs in New York or Los Angeles, and then you're going to have you back on the show soon.
Look forward to it.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our 99th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. I hope to see you out at May 1st if you're in Los Angeles, and I hope you go to the protest if you're on the East Coast in New York City. And I hope to see all of you corresponding with us about the pitch I made to contribute your ideas, your testimonials, your creativity towards growing the audience of this show, the RNL Show, and gather watch parties. We'd like to have big parties watching the 100th episode of the RNL Show next week. That is at Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time. So with that, I'm going to say good night, and we'll see you next week for the 100th episode.